You've tried productivity hacks. You've tried follow your passion. You've tried chasing money, status, and comfort. And yet, when things finally go quiet, there's still that question in the back of your mind. Is this really it? What if the problem isn't you, but the entire way modern life defines happiness? Over 2,300 years ago, one man looked at this problem and tried to solve it once and for all. He didn't write a motivational quote. He built a full system. That man was Aristotle. And today, we're going to break down his blueprint for a genuinely good life, a life of deep, lasting fulfillment, and how you can start applying it right now. Welcome to Sovereign Mind. Look at how most people try to live. Work harder, earn more, buy more, collect experiences, collect followers, collect status. We've been sold the idea that the good life is basically maximize pleasure, minimize pain. Aristotle watched people do a primitive version of the same thing in ancient Greece and came to a harsh conclusion. Pleasure, honor, and wealth are all too shallow to build a life on. Think about it. Pleasure feels great until it ends. Then you need more. Honor depends on what other people think of you, which you can't control. Wealth is just a tool. You can be rich and still miserable. Ask yourself, how long did your last big win actually satisfy you? A week? A day? A few hours? Aristotle noticed this endless cycle and said, if your happiness can be taken away by a bad day, a bad comment, or a bad market, it's not real happiness. So, what is it? He called it Eudaimonia, usually translated as flourishing. Not just feeling good, but functioning well as a human being. Not a moment, a life. To find it, he said, we first need to answer a deeper question. What is a human being for? Everything has a function. The function of a knife is to cut. The function of an eye is to see. The function of a musician is to make music. A good knife cuts well. A good eye sees clearly. A good musician plays beautifully. So Aristotle asked, what's the function of a human being? Not just what we can do, but what we can do that nothing else can. His answer, our unique function is to live according to reason. Not just to think occasionally, but to use our rational mind to shape our choices, our habits, our character, and our life. So if that's our function, then a good human life is living rationally, consistently, over a complete life. That's eudaimonia. It's not a spike of joy. It's a stable condition of the soul. And this is crucial. You don't have eudaimonia because you had a good weekend. You achieve eudaimonia when your whole way of living expresses the best in you over time. But how do you actually create that kind of life in practice? Aristotle's answer, virtue. When you hear virtue, you might think of being polite or following rules or being a good person. That's not what Aristotle meant. For him, virtue means excellence. The same way we say a virtuoso musician, someone excellent at their craft, Aristotle talks about a virtuous person, someone excellent at living. How do you become excellent at anything? You don't read one book and wake up transformed. You repeat actions. You practice. You fail. You refine. Eventually, what was hard becomes natural. Aristotle said character works exactly like that. You become brave by doing brave things. You become honest by telling truth when it costs you. You become disciplined by choosing the long-term good over the short-term hit. Again and again. Every choice leaves a mark. If you regularly avoid difficult conversations, you're training yourself in cowardice. If you regularly lie to escape consequences, you're training yourself in dishonesty. If you regularly give in to every impulse, you're training yourself in weakness. Over time, these choices crystallize into habits. Those habits become your character, and your character shapes your entire life. The good news is brutal and empowering at the same time. You are not stuck with the character you have, but you are responsible for the one you're building. So, what exactly are we practicing toward? That leads to one of Aristotle's most famous ideas, the golden mean. Aristotle noticed something interesting. Most virtues sit between two vices. Take courage. On one side, you have cowardice, running from every danger. On the other side, you have recklessness, running into every danger without thinking. Courage is the mean between them, facing what should be faced for the right reasons in the right way. Or take generosity. One extreme is stinginess, never giving, always clinging. The other is wastefulness, giving thoughtlessly even when it harms you or others. True generosity lives in the middle, giving wisely to the right people in the right amount at the right time. The golden mean is not about being bland or average, it's about hitting the right point for the situation. And here's the twist. The middle is not mathematically exact. It depends on you and your circumstances. For a trained athlete, the right amount of food and exercise is very different than for a beginner. For a billionaire, a generous donation looks very different for someone working minimum wage. The mean is personal. Finding it requires judgment, which is why Aristotle says we need more than just individual virtues. We need practical wisdom. Practical wisdom, or phronesis, is the virtue that guides all the others. It's the ability to see clearly what the situation calls for and to choose well. You can think of it as your inner strategist. Courage without wisdom is recklessness. Generosity without wisdom is self-destruction. Discipline without wisdom becomes rigidity and burnout. Practical wisdom asks, what is truly good here? What leads to long-term flourishing, not just short-term relief? What would the best version of me do in this moment? But there is a problem. Even when we know the right thing, we don't always do it. You know you should stop scrolling and go to bed. You know you should work on the hard project instead of checking your notifications again. You know that one more argument, one more jab will only make things worse, and yet you do it anyway. Aristotle calls this weakness of will. Your rational mind says one thing, your desires and impulses drag you another way. That's why self-mastery is at the core of his system. The more you practice aligning your actions with what your reason says is good, the stronger your character becomes. And over time, the internal war quiets down. You want what is good for you. You take pleasure in what actually leads to flourishing. That's when virtue stops feeling like a costume you put on and starts feeling like who you are. Aristotle doesn't imagine a good life as a solo project. He says that no one would choose to live without friends, even if they had all of their goods. But not all friendships are equal. There are friendships of utility, people you're around because they're useful. There are friendships of pleasure, people you enjoy but only on the surface. Above those, Aristotle describes friendships of virtue. These are rare. They're built on mutual respect and shared commitment to the good. You don't just enjoy each other, you help each other become better. In these friendships, your pursuit of eudaimonia is reinforced, mirrored, and challenged by someone else on the same path. And above even that, Aristotle says there's one activity that sits at the peak of human life: contemplation. Not mindless distraction, not shallow entertainment, but deep, focused engagement with truth. Think about what is eternal, noble, and profound. Using your highest faculty, reason, on the highest objects. For Aristotle, a flourishing life is a rhythm. Thoughtful action in the world, deep relationships with virtuous friends, and regular time stepping back to contemplate what really matters. So, here's Aristotle's blueprint for the good life, in one chain. Your function is to live according to reason. Living according to reason consistently over a whole life is eudaimonia, true flourishing. You reach that by cultivating virtues, excellences of character, through repeated deliberate action. You aim for the golden mean between destructive extremes. You develop practical wisdom to know what the situation calls for. You gain self-mastery so your actions follow your judgment. You surround yourself with virtuous friends. And you regularly step back to contemplate the highest things. None of this happens overnight. But it also doesn't require mystical secrets or perfect circumstances. It requires one thing: treat your life as a practice. Every decision is a rep. Every habit is a vote for the person you're becoming. The question is, are you training yourself towards flourishing or away from it? If you want to keep turning ancient philosophy into practical frameworks for modern life, subscribe.